Hello again, everybody, and welcome inside the Howitzer and Buzz-saw Show. I am George the Howitzer Gerbo.
And I am Mike the Buzz-saw Asti.
Sports Talk back with you as we have reached nearly the conclusion of the NCAA men's and women's basketball tournaments. That will be a fun weekend coming up. Got WrestleMania this weekend. Got a lot of things going on this weekend. WrestleMania 40. Throw that in there. Just
full weekend too. Full weekend, question mark on what the main event will still be. More intrigue to this WrestleMania than really any in recent years, and they're managing to do this despite a cloud hanging over them of what's going on in the life of Vince McMahon, that they are powering through and kind of avoiding that coverage because of how intriguing this is. So that perfect storm does happen here coming up.
A little bit of everything for Formula One race this weekend too, for folks like myself that are some people aren't into that, but
I have a student in my class actually that is really into that. He's
nice
multiple times. Yes,
I should have I should have met him.
He was there. He was there.
There's a group, me and three friends, including friend of the program Justin, who not every time, but pretty frequently, and pretty much more than half the races, like we host watch parties. So we coordinate and make sure. Sometimes it's live, sometimes we avoid the result to make sure we can see the race with no spoilers, and then we get together and either have like breakfast or brunch.
I feel like Sam might want to go.
It's super
Sam
fun.
may want to.
We've all got different rooting, competing interest, which is kind of fun too. So even though the races are have become standardized with Max Verstappen's dominance, but they're still there are. To wrap up, this will wrap up the Formula One segment. There are still, if you like race, like I'm just in it. I like racing. Like I their storylines are great in the race. Like I like
racing, but I can't see doing a watch party for just Formula One. Like that seems like someone who just likes racing. That's in the deep end.
Yes. It's very niche. We'll give you that. Like we're looking at tire compounds and pit times and pit strategy, like that stuff. If you like racing, and that kind of extends to like I'd watch NASCAR kind of in the same way,
I would do a watch party for NASCAR more than I would do one for Formula One, I feel like. But
it's so you've got to like if you like the intricacy of motorsport, then there are things beyond just Max Verstappen wins every race, which he hasn't this season. Carlos Sainz won the last one, but there are things for the diehard race fans in there. But I understand among American fans, like the fatigue of, hey, this dude has won like 90% of the races for the last 3 seasons, basically. So I get it. But if you like motorsport, there are interesting things and storylines beyond just who's winning the races. So
I will say that in the mainstream sports, when there's a dynasty, the ratings actually go up. Even though fans get annoyed, Golden State Warriors, Patriots, they actually bring in the fans when you have a marquee player like that dominating, or a marquee team like that dominating. So that can be the sales pitch still. For people to watch this Formula One. That is our first, I believe, in a decade now of the show, our first Formula One segment here on the HBS.
There you go. It is.
That closes the chapter on Formula One, and we will now discuss the rest of the sports calendar here on the Howitzer and Buzz-saw Show.
A reminder that you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, that includes on Apple, Google, Spotify, TuneIn, and more. Just search Howitzer there to find us. Also a reminder that all the music that you hear in the background here on the HBS is courtesy of Kellen B-Conley and the Hyphen Podcast Group. Check out all of his stuff at hyphenuniverse.com and hyphenpodcastgroup.com.
And of course, if you can't find us, you're just really not trying hard enough, because we are available everywhere you get your podcasts, and also, of course, on social at Mike Asti 11 for myself, at Gerbo 3 for George, and of course, the show handle is still there at Howitzer Buzz-saw, and that is across social media, not just X.
We will start this edition of the Howitzer and Buzz-saw Show.
Some breaking news of the day.
Yeah, a little bit more football-y, intrudes sometimes into the workings of the off season here.
They find their way, man. This is why they moved the draft further back. We're talking about all this game action of all these sports this time of year. NFL is going to headline the show, headline most shows in the offseason. That shows you who's the top dog.
Yeah. And after, good night of basketball, we had
Right.
you had two guys with triple doubles in losses. Luka Doncic and Giannis Antetokounmpo both, had triple doubles and lost games. Kind of
Yeah.
wild.
And
But
Caitlin Clark the night
yeah,
before, and
right
with
after.
LSU, and Angel Reese now is going pro as well, so they're both going to be the WNBA at the same time. And the LSU Iowa matchup the night before, even Paige Becker and UConn versus Juju doing their thing for the future of the women's game.
Yeah, literally right after in the afterglow of what the women did. 12+ million people watching it, most watched women's basketball game ever. Very cool atmosphere. And here slightly intrudes the NFL news once again, but it's significant. We're not even talking random. It's not our normal off season where Mike and I regale you of, is Aaron Rodgers going to go to the We're not
This
that,
is the first time. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers coming off of the injury season, so he's going to stay the course, still play.
Yeah.
This is literally the first season in probably 4 years Aaron Rodgers is not debating what he's going to do. He's going to be back because he wants to kind of rejuvenate and end his career in a better note than last year with an injury a few minutes in. And he's not changing teams because the Jets wouldn't let him, and he wants to again have a legacy there with New York. So Aaron Rodgers is decided, and that allows that part of the offseason that has owned the calendar for 4+ years to be decided. But still, there's still drama. Dak Prescott and Jerry Jones still kind of battling over a contract. And then this bomb drop with Stefon Diggs moving on and maybe closing a window for an MVP candidate.
The third team for the former Terp, Minnesota to Buffalo. Now he is going to Houston in exchange for only a 2025 second round pick. So not even a pick this year, a pick next year, and in the second round. And Houston will also get Buffalo's 6th round pick from this year and 5th round pick from next year. So 3 assets, including Diggs, going south in the direction of Houston, and depart and Buffalo in return getting a second rounder next year. We'll talk about what it means for Houston in a second. I think the immediate thing that strikes me, Mike, is Buffalo, which is kind of undergoing this. It's not, you hear rebuild is like the first word that comes to the top of my mind. It's not a rebuild. It's like
you can't with an MVP who's in his 20s. Like, what are you doing? But
it's like, we're detailing we're doing some mods. If you got a car, like, it's not like we're scrapping the car and getting a new one. We're gonna put some mods on the car. We're gonna do some detailing. We're gonna get a new spoiler. We're gonna better air intake. New tires. Like, you're making some mods to the machine here. The machine's still the same, i.e., like you said, Josh Allen and what they're gonna do. But that team has moved on from.
Yeah, but is this machine better? Is this a Haas-like machine, to go back to the Formula One conversation? Or is this, down in the dumps where you're driving, you're staying the course, but then your wheel falls off mid-race?
Yeah.
Because you're talking about beefing up the car. Again, Josh Allen is 27 years old. He's an MVP candidate every season, even though he hasn't won it. His stats show he can still get it done. His playoff numbers are good. His losses are to perennial powerhouse teams and fellow all-pro quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes and company. And Patrick Mahomes really the guy that stands in his way. So you are right there. You just can't get over the Chiefs hump. Yes, the Chiefs are still good, but eventually you may, George. Eventually, Peyton Manning beat Tom Brady, and he was able to win a championship and eventually able to do it again. This now feels like I'll connect it. This feels like Josh Allen is Peyton Manning of the early 2000s, whereas Patrick Mahomes is Tom Brady. He couldn't get over Tom Brady, could Peyton Manning. But this would be like if during that 2005 situation, 2004, where they still can't break through, all of a sudden Marvin Harrison is gone. You lose him to another team. Does that make 2006 happen without him? Because you're losing continuity, you're losing chemistry, you're losing your best weapon in your machine of a team that's successful. Stefon Diggs leaving Josh Allen right now, even though we all know the drama of the past couple years. They may or may not be friends. They were arguing over who really gets credit. There was a tweet just yesterday, George, where Stefon Diggs liked the comment from somebody about Josh Allen. I believe the comment was
tweet. Reply.
Yeah, so people were debating on whether Josh Allen could be elite without Stefon Diggs, because Stefon Diggs has been there the whole time with Josh Allen. And somebody replied that you're mentioning that he obviously is helped by Stefon Diggs, but he can still be elite without him. And then Stefon Diggs replied to that saying, "You sure?" with a question mark. And then he is gone, traded 24 hours later. In fact, less than 24 hours later, it finally happens. So you're losing a key piece as you're still trying to get it done with a window open. Again, the Colts would never have let Marvin Harrison get away before Peyton Manning can get the title and get over the hump of the Patriots. This happens before they beat out the Chiefs. They have yet to even get near a Super Bowl in this iteration, despite Allen being so great. How is this a positive if you're a Bills fan before we get to the Texans?
Yeah, that's kind of the wild part of it is not only are you're going to, and as Mike mentioned, and as we talked about on this program last year, the shadow, is there a beef between Diggs and Allen? And they went into camp being like, no, we're all hunky dory. But then you saw, Diggs get demonstrative on the sidelines toward Allen. And it happens during the course of the game. I'm not going to ding the guy for that. But I assume there's something brewing under the surface there that maybe has been going on for more than just a year that might have contributed to this. Besides Diggs, and I think you can make it work in that Buffalo offense, depending on. And
glass half full for George Gerbo here somehow.
Glass half full. I'll give you this. On offense, the glass is half full for me because not only Stefon Diggs, no Gabe Davis too. Gabe Davis is gone as well, so that's a big deal. It makes me. I'll go glass half full with the caveat, and the caveat is for them to somehow get into the high first round.
So you're figuring drafting a receiver who's younger and receivers can have an impact right away.
That's kind of what it's telegraphing to me. Like, so you just got a second round pick.
Who are you getting though? Are you getting Marvin Harrison Jr. to bring up the name again? Are you getting Neighbors, who some argue is actually the better receiver? Xavier Worthy, when I was at the Combine, he actually set a record for the fastest man alive, even though he's not necessarily in that top 2 conversation. Any of these guys, obviously they don't have the top pick. You could fall and get the third best receiver and think he's a speedster to take the top off.
And a fourth guy that you didn't name that sticks out to me, more Roma Dunze from Washington.
Yeah.
Because
it's deep for sure.
It's deep, and you look at the way. Not that I'm comparing Penix.
You could argue Xavier Worthy is 4th or 5th out of that group because even maybe beyond his speed, is his hands the same? But again, the depth is there overall.
The depth is there, and I think Harrison's the first one off the board, and then Daniels. So after that, give or take how, the top 12-ish picks kind of break down, a lot of quarterbacks, some offensive linemen, maybe not really heavy on defense. If you're Buffalo and you're 28, all you got to do is kind of get to maybe 16 or 17 and get a Roma Dunze or somebody.
So you need to trade up. You need to do work and give up.
You do need to. Yes, you definitely do need to trade up. So it's a glass half full. I think if they can go get one of these stud wide receivers in a first round that is bursting with them, you'll be able to kind of replace that in a way that honestly Green Bay has done in the last couple of seasons.
You lose Adams, right?
They eschew these big guys or trade big guys like Devontae Adams, and it might take a year or two, but you're better off in the long run with it. Now, the place I'm more concerned about Buffalo, Mike, is on defense.
Well, that's yes.
Like when we talk about all these things, they score points with everybody. Save for that weird ass Miami game they played in Miami. They cannot win in Miami, but they can beat Miami and Buffalo. Like that's their thing. But no, these games against the Chiefs or whatever, it's like, okay, you thought they finally had it on defense. Jordan Poyer gone to Miami, I believe.
Miami.
Former Mountaineer Rasul Douglas, who they traded for in the middle of the season from Green Bay, which I thought was a great move for them. He's looking for work now.
He's in a contract situation, although I thought he could still come back there. They were still talking a little bit, but maybe not.
Yeah, Tre'Davious White in the secondary's gone. Leonard Floyd in the linebacking core.
You're not relying on Von Miller anymore to try to do the hired gun thing. I mean, he for his whole career he was a hired gun to win a championship, but it feels like that's over. He's getting hurt every year now. It feels like they missed the boat on him. My problem is, George, I agree. The defense clearly is the number one concern for the Bills. However, you are requiring a replace. They still need to replace.
They still need to replace. Yeah, I am. Yeah, so the caveat is you can't just go into camp like this. They need to replace him somehow. I don't know if
that's my point.
It's either it's a draft day trade to move up and take a young guy, or a draft day trade to bring an asset in, like we saw with AJ Brown a couple of years ago.
But here's my issue. So we agree, I think everyone would, that even though defense is their Achilles heel, literally, that you still can't just pluck off your best offensive weapon and be fine. You need to
just
replace it.
exist.
And it can be from the draft. Receiver is a position that right away you can get one and he can be a star. I do agree you shouldn't pay receivers, and part of this eventually will be about money, despite the drama. You're not going to want to shell out hundreds of millions of dollars to a receiver when you can easily replace them. We did see with Green Bay and Adams. These are still kind of small market franchises. They operate similarly in the Bills and the Packers, wild fan bases, but still kind of small markets. They're not going to shell out tons of cash. You'd rather pay Allen whenever he needs a new deal. I get it. My issue, because you're talking about it took the Packers a couple years. Unfortunately, Bills fans are not waiting. They are not drafting another QB where they can get a year or two of a maturation process. It is right now. You got the MVP candidate at 27 right now. He's in his prime. You probably got 2 or 3 more years of this prime. Most Hall of Fame guys, they may win late like Elway, but they usually do get the ring relatively early in terms of mid in their career if they're going to get one. The Bills franchise has never won. They're cursed. The fan base is going to get more anxious the more years you go without winning. The Chiefs could easily do it next year. So my issue is you lose this piece now. Again, this would be like losing Marvin Harrison in 2005 before the Colts won. It doesn't send you a good message. The vibes are not good. You got to replace the production. And in the draft, George, you're talking about trading up to get that guy in the first round. Sure, that's reasonable. They can do it. But if we agree defense is where you need to have help, and you're not going to bring back Douglas possibly, Von Miller is no longer what he was. You're losing all these pieces. Jordan Poyer is gone. Shouldn't you spend that first round pick on a defensive player to replace any of those guys? So now you're not going to be able to replace those guys with a quality guy because you're worrying about receiver when you already had no pro receiver. Wouldn't you rather stay the course? This isn't like Diggs was going to walk in 2 months for a new contract if you didn't do this. This screams to me like a franchise, which we have not seen as much in recent years, but used to always see in sports, caving to drama.
Yeah.
Where they realized, whether it be the people, the brother, because he's been tweeting, and all of that Stefon Diggs does not want to play with Josh Allen any longer because he does not feel like he's going to get the credit he deserves for being there because the quarterback gets all the credit. However, if you're the Bills, you could sit him down and say, I hear you. We're going to wait another year while you have this contract because we want to win a championship. Are you going to sit down? Are you going to try to win? Caving to him, here's the problem. You cave to him. You still need defensive help. That's really your issue. Yes, you can replace the receiver help, but then you're once again in a problem defensively. And, George, you didn't get enough value back in this trade for now. You're worrying about 2025. You're getting second-round compensation, not first rate. That's almost my first reaction outside of the Bills window is closing. The Texans window is wide open, which we'll get to. But also, this market has been soft for players. This is a bad market to trade a big player guy. I don't see how this is enough value when now you need more in the draft than you would have needed 2 days ago, whether it be defense or now needing a receiver.
It's in the process of having to acclimate.
That's my glass half empty, right?
Yeah. And to your point, like the process of having to acclimate whoever it is, whether it's a guy that's a veteran in the league, if they're somehow able to trade for a veteran wide receiver, Adam Thielen, who's in Carolina, like I'm just throwing out random names.
Okay.
No, just like, who you either have to do that or
Stefon Diggs, right?
Yeah. Or it's, like I'm saying, bring in a Roma Dunze or a draft guy, but there's still that acclimation period that may take 6 weeks. And in that division, granted, Buffalo did pull themselves out of it, and because Miami kind of collapsed at the end and they clawed their way back.
The Jets are better now with Rodgers.
Yeah, you figure the Jets are going to be more competitive regardless of how they look. You figure that Miami is still going to be a competitive team as well, even though they've had some changes on the defensive side of the ball.
Are still a mess,
and the Patriots are a little bit of a mess. So yeah, I'd rather have, I don't want to say devil you know, devil you don't, but I'd rather have the commodity I know.
Right.
Stefon Diggs, like, hey, you're going to get some of this stuff, and it's nowhere near, the historic I'm not even going to call him I'm not even going to say the word diva, but like it's nowhere near that level of stuff. Regardless,
no, this
of
isn't TO, right?
It's not that.
Right.
Like,
this isn't deactivating.
I'm willing to work
sure.
with Stefon Diggs, regardless of his umbrage that he has with Josh Allen because of what he brings to the football team. You know.
Well, and so, unless George, and again, we don't know the inner workings of this necessarily. And receiver is the position that always gets called a diva, even though I do kind of get it because it is the position that you're reliant on somebody else to have success and get your numbers, whether individual or team, no matter what. It's the one position in sports. That's why they're kind of diva players. But we don't know if Stefon Diggs and his people, we've seen tweets from him and his brother kind of liking different things, making comments. Usually if a brother says something, usually he heard that from the player himself, whether you should say it or not. So we don't know if Stefon Diggs' people, George, didn't tell the Bills, look, this isn't Keyshawn Johnson getting deactivated after a championship or T.O. doing sit-ups in his driveway right now. But if you don't move this man, it will be.
Maybe turns into that.
Like maybe they're kind of saying like, we want out. We're being nice now. We're going to like some tweets, but we won't do sit-ups in our driveway. But we don't want to do another season of this. Maybe the relationship is irreparable. I mean, maybe something went on between Allen and Stefon Diggs that we still don't know, even in the public. Who knows? So maybe they were forced to do this. I don't think they got enough. And the other problem of what you're mentioning, George, if you were going to do this and you were going to replace the production, whether it be in the draft, maybe, or if you wanted to get a veteran receiver because you're in win now mode and then you still need defensive help in the early rounds of the draft, you should have done this 2 weeks ago and traded for Deontay Johnson. That was not a major steal by the Panthers. It wasn't like they had to give up the farm to get him. He's maybe not a number one. He's not Stefon Diggs. But if you wanted
to get rid of him.
Right, like they were dealing with their own drama. So like if you wanted a veteran receiver that could help you, even if you do still draft somebody and you believe Deontay is not a one, because obviously Stefon Diggs is, you could trade for Deontay, not give up that much. Maybe he get rejuvenated there. He's your two. You get somebody in the draft who maybe is your future one, and then you still get defensive help. That would help you now. Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, I don't know if I'm slurping the Kool-Aid. They're going to go ahead and win a championship like some are now saying with him healthy. They have added other pieces, but I think everyone can agree they're probably a 10-win team making the playoffs at minimum. They're just Rodgers, even if he's what he was 2 years ago and is not nearly an MVP guy, that still knocked the Packers on the door of the playoffs, even when people were saying he was kind of done. Yeah. They were right there, even though they didn't get in. There is more help around him now with New York if everyone's healthy. You figure they're there. And George, outside the division, you would figure, separate from what we see around the league, that it's not just about the division. So you would figure Herbert and the Chargers with Harbaugh there are a little bit better now, that a former quarterback will make Herbert even better and they would get something out of that group. You would figure maybe the Raiders, who turned it on at the end of last season, are a little bit better. You would figure the Steelers, they went from 13 combined TDs in 2 years to Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Question marks. Fields may never get it done and Russell Wilson may never be what he was, but even if they're just what they were last year, that's a quarterback improvement. And you would figure they were in the playoffs last year with nothing at QB, basically, Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, etc. Mm-hmm. They're better off now. So that's a better situation too. You would figure it's harder to even be a wild card if the Jets would win the division. So again, you're losing a piece in the midst of win now mode with an MVP candidate quarterback. The vibes are not better now. The fans are freaking out now. You need defensive help too. This isn't just losing Stefon Diggs. You're losing Poyer, etc. I don't know how this is good for the Bills, but I guess how great is this for the Houston Texans, because their window is now wide open with C.J. Stroud. Nobody saw this coming a year ago. They end up hitting the ground running. They were a contender last year with Stroud, one of the best rookie seasons ever. Now you add Stefon Diggs there as a veteran receiver, plus what they've done in the draft in recent years. The Texans look like they could legit contend for the AFC Championship game, if not more. Like, they feel like they are ready for the next decade. Mm-hmm. That even though, and I said this initially when I heard the news, if you're a Texans fan, George, even in the prime of J.J. Watt, this might be the most excited you've ever been going into a season.
They realize that and have bolstered and just loaded up and been like, hey, this is what, we see that this is the thing of opportunity. And it's fascinating in this league, in the National Football League, in this era, to see teams not have to wait 3-4+ years for the development of guys and be like, yo, dude's good. Dude did it. Dude won us a division. Let's build around him and hit it now. You won the division last year, weak division, admittedly, but the division that has Trevor Lawrence in it. Anthony Richardson comes back from injury for Indianapolis. So it's a division that's stocked with young quarterbacks. And besides adding Stefon Diggs, you already have another guy come back from injury on your roster. That's Tank Dell, who had a really amazing season last year and stood out in his, the first couple weeks of the season before he got injured. And a month ago, realizing it, you just traded for Joe Mixon from Cincinnati, but played in a Super Bowl.
It's just spoil of riches there, right?
Yeah. And like you've got two, he's, you call him more of a veteran now, 5+ years. Joe Mixon's been in the league, but still young. So you got him in your backfield, you got CJ Stroud in your backfield, and you got Tank Dell and now Stefon Diggs, who slots in as WR1 in your offense. Like, it's going to be a fun team to watch. Expectations are going to be high. We'll see how he manages them. But everything you see about CJ, has shown that he's proven to be this level-headed, super grounded guy, and he's a fun guy to watch. I admittedly was skeptical solely because I'll give you
nobody saw last season coming.
Well, and I'm gonna
Ohio State quarterback.
The Ohio State thing, like you look at Fields, and we've been through me thinking Fields should have stayed in Chicago, but Bears went and said no, screw you. Now we'll see if he gets a chance or whatever he will do in the future.
Well, clearly they're drafting Caleb Williams now, so we lost that intrigue. So maybe the draft intrigue is what do the Bills do? Do they trade up? Because that's clearly gone. The Bears are clearly taking Caleb Williams to restart the rookie clock and have a better QB in their eyes.
But this isn't meant to drag on Ohio State, but it's a low bar to clear to become the best Ohio State quarterback in NFL history.
Right.
If I recall correctly, an Ohio State quarterback still has not led a team to the Super Bowl. There's still not been an Ohio State starting quarterback in the history of the Super Bowl. So it's not a deep bench. That's not what they're known for in Columbus. So for Stroud to come out of that system right after Fields and be able to do this, not Cardale Jones, not Fields, it was Stroud is the guy.
Not Terrell Pryor,
is carrying the baton for this most recent in the last decade group of Buckeye quarterbacks is kind of pretty cool. And it's fun to watch him, and we'll see what happens. Expectations will be high, but he's got a comfortable environment. It's not the AFC East. It's the AFC
That's
South.
what I mean. The Jacksonville Jaguars took a step back a little bit.
Yeah, you'll see
the
what
Colts
happens if
are
Lawrence
still kind of waiting if they get healthy.
Yeah,
this is a fun division in terms of everyone's young, like Trevor Lawrence, Richardson. This is a young group of kind of very mobile, athletic quarterbacks that are all in the same division for years to come. You would figure they're going to be there. Will Levis as well. You figure they're going to be there for the next decade. Maybe we'll see how they all do, but you have to feel like if you're a Texans fan, again, George, out of all the players I mentioned, all the QBs in your division, you have the best one. You have the most talented one. You have the best coach. Your team just did it, even though they didn't win a championship. They just did it. They just were able to have a playoff contending season out of nowhere. You're now adding a veteran in Stefon Diggs, who you would certainly argue is maybe the best player overall in the entire division. Maybe Stroud will be that now, but Stroud is likely the best quarterback. Stefon Diggs might be the best player, certainly the best receiver. Maybe you feel like you have the best coach. Certainly could argue maybe the best defense. How do you not win the division? They're going to have expectations to where if they don't win 10 games and win the division, certainly if they're not at least a wild card team, that is by far, we don't even have to ask the question a year from now. That is by far the most disappointing season in the league. If they all of a sudden would win 7 games and miss out in the playoffs, they have to get in now, and they probably have to win a playoff game with this team, even though, to their credit and to the benefit, this isn't just like the Bills. Their window is now closing a little bit with a 27-year-old quarterback unless they do something else. The Texans likely have another 5 years now. I mean, Stefon Diggs is older. He might not go 5 years as an elite receiver, but you can replace that too. And with CJ Stroud and what he just did, you have to figure this is a window now. Like, they have increased their window to where this is the time. Arguably, they're ahead of schedule already.
And the crazy part, as you paused that question, is Stefon. It's crazy how quickly the division changed, because if you asked 2 seasons ago, so not before last season, but the 2022 year, who's the best player in the division, it might have been Trevor Lawrence at that point in time. You know,
Yeah,
that's how quickly everybody
Maybe.
was like, okay, here he shit. You got the weird Urban
And
Meyer
now not
thing,
even
which,
the best quarterback. People might think Stroud's
yeah,
better than him now, honestly. Yeah.
Doug Peterson comes in, does a good job.
Yeah, he's a
You know,
championship level coach. Maybe he's the
but
best coach,
yeah,
but
so
still,
Jacksonville's got some, and after the aforementioned Gabe Davis will now be there in Jacksonville, so we'll see what that does for the Jags. But yeah, they've got some growing there to do now, and Lawrence has kind of had fits and starts with a whole bunch of different offensive coordinators, and obviously Urban Meyer and all that type of stuff in his first year in the league. So now you get more stable, and we'll see if Jacksonville can kind of return a little bit to what the promise they might have been. But yeah, now you've got Houston is kind of like, just, hey, we'll take the mantle right now, we'll win the division, and we'll set ourselves up hopefully for the next few years.
At the very least, we might see a rarity in the NFL. We might have multiple playoff teams from that division. Because if you're the Texans, and even if the Jaguars do turn back to where they were 2 years ago, Trevor Lawrence and company, and they have a Super Bowl winning head coach, they could do that. Maybe you still get a wild card. Again, yes, the AFC all of a sudden, George, we were talking on this show 2 years ago, certainly even going into last season, maybe, that, okay, the AFC has the Chiefs, obviously a dynasty, the Ravens, MVPs for Lamar Jackson. They're right there knocking at the door. They meet in the conference title game. Outside of that, the Steelers, Burrow gets hurt. The Steelers always disappoint, generally speaking, don't really have a QB. Maybe they do now. Question marks all over the place. Herbert can't win despite all the numbers. It now feels like there's tons of depth in the conference, that you're going to have more than just 7 good teams. You're going to have good teams left out, and arguably more than just 1 or 2 elite teams in the conference, that maybe the pendulum is shifting a little bit from the NFC kind of dominating to maybe the AFC is the better conference now. If we're talking NFC in terms of teams that really can win it all, you're talking about maybe a couple franchises. Maybe you're throwing Detroit in there now because of what they did last year, obviously. Maybe you think Green Bay. Maybe the Rams could get back. Certainly the Niners, because they've been in the Super Bowl and are right there away from winning it. People may argue the Cowboys, but they always flounder in the playoffs. Maybe Kirk Cousins is someone you believe in with the Falcons, an easy division. But outside of that, there's more in the
AFC. Yeah.
It's more spread out in the AFC. Right.
Yeah. You've got there's more quality deeper in the AFC at this point.
Maybe the NFC is more top heavy, but there's more in the AFC.
Yeah. And NFC super top heavy. Like you said, if we're talking Detroit, we're talking San Francisco. But
maybe Seattle back again too.
Yeah. But then you look at where it falls off, like AFC North. It's Detroit. Green Bay made the playoffs, but kind of unexpectedly, and then everything else below that's blah. The East.
You also got to figure the Niners. There's a big drop off between Green Bay and those teams, and maybe there is one behind the Chiefs. But it almost feels like there's a bigger drop off from the Niners, the Lions, and the Packers, etc., versus the Chiefs to the Ravens. The Ravens probably are closer.
Yeah, we'll put Dallas in that conversation.
I mean, 12 wins a season, they got to be in the conversation.
But then you look at Philadelphia, where it's like, oh, Philadelphia, and it fall off a cliff, and then predictably lose to Tampa, who gets in because somebody got to come out of the NFC South, and here you go.
Point of it is the AFC is more intriguing now than they were. That the point of it is the AFC as a conference is much more intriguing than it was, and the Texans, I feel like, are for real now. And George, even if they would disappoint, and I'm not going to say a franchise that has never won has to be title or bust next season with a very, very young quarterback in his second year. That's a hot take. I'm sure some will drop. I'm not going to do that. However, what I will say, again, if you're a Texans fan, you got to love this. Because even if you don't win a title, and even if you don't win the division, this shows your franchise wants to win a championship now. Like, they are chips in the middle of the table. They're all in. They are trying. I feel like as sports fans, that's all people can ask for is your franchise to go all in when the window is open, when you have a chance, when you see a quarterback ascend, get him the weapons, get him the line help now. Don't wait 3 years. Now. We've seen so many Hall of Famers not win a championship. George, we brought up Aaron Rodgers before. Aaron Rodgers will tell you he should have more than 1 ring. The Packers probably believe that too. I'm sure you as a Packer fan, if you knew 4 MVPs, you would like more than 1 ring and not to lose the Niners so many times in the playoffs. Maybe he wanted more around him. Yeah, there were weapons there, but he always talked about that. Seize the day. And the Texans are trying to seize the day. So kudos to the Texans. Even if it doesn't work out, kudos to the Texans.
Very specifically, it's that Richard Rodgers botched onside kick year when they lost in Seattle and they had won that game. Like that's what,
well,
like that,
I mean,
like that, like that's the one that's almost like that should have been the slam dunk second.
I guess, but you don't think a few years ago when Rodgers was lighting it up as an MVP and then went in the playoffs?
Oh,
and
no,
threw
sure.
90 yards all of a sudden and they couldn't move the ball. Like that was like a different guy.
It's more, it's those prime, these last few ones, it's like the ones that stick out to me. It's
lost
prime McCarthy years. It's the San Francisco didn't even bother me. It's losing to the bleeping Giants all them damn time.
But it's not so much
home. Like those are the ones.
Okay. I would say, I'll tell you this. I'll give you this as the trump card to your being more bothered by the Giants.
Yeah.
He won't admit this on McAfee.
They weren't good Giant teams either. That's the dumb part. Sorry.
Well, yeah, but that's you as a fan. Rodgers won't admit this, but Rodgers is more bothered by the Niners' losses.
Yeah.
Because he grew up a Niners fan.
Burned by him, all that
they
stuff.
Burned him. Yeah. And even though he did get a ring and the Niners haven't got one in this era, they've been in more Super Bowls. They beat him in the playoffs. You feel like Niners fans can brag to him where that wasn't what he literally on draft day said, I'm going to make
more bothered.
Right. He did. Yeah. He was talking about how they're going to regret not taking me. If you're a Niners fan, do you regret not taking him? You beat him every time.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't want to go down that road for CJ Stroud. And the problem is he did get a ring early in his career, unlike, say, Marino and Manning eventually got one. The pressure is now, if you're talking about a quarterback with pressure on him, Josh Allen has more pressure really than maybe any other quarterback, maybe Dak Prescott too, to win a playoff game, because these guys are getting older. Josh Allen's only 27, but they can't get over the Chiefs with Stefon Diggs and Jordan Poyer there. How are they going to get over the Chiefs without Jordan Poyer and without Stefon Diggs there? They might still add things, but you're losing help in the midst of your window with a young quarterback that is now in his prime. But how many more years do you have this? The Bills don't get to a Super Bowl appearance, at least, with Josh Allen. That is a major disappointment for this era, because some are arguing he's already a better quarterback as an individual and maybe the best Bills quarterback of all time over Jim Kelly. It's hard to trump 4 Super Bowl appearances in a row, even though they didn't win. This Bills franchise feels like they've taken a step back, even though they should be taking a step forward. That's really my summary, and that's the point here. I don't know how the vibes are better losing Stefon Diggs, even knowing the drama of recent years and knowing maybe what you can replace. But now you need to do more work in the draft than you would have before.
Yeah, as it stands now, that peak, or at least what feels like that peak for the Bills.
Like last year was the chance. It really felt like last year was the year.
Last year had a chance, but like that game they lose in Kansas City in overtime.
Yeah, that one too.
Like that really sticks out. And then last year, to your point,
it's a more vulnerable Chiefs team, and you're better. I feel like.
Yeah, last year you get that game in Buffalo,
right?
And like for the first time, because we're playing in Kansas City and it's loud and Arrowhead.
That
and
was the thing.
Got him in Buffalo, and couldn't seal the deal. And so now you feel like, where does it go? Because it's like you said, it's hard to come back and do it again to get to sustain that point. Kansas City's done it, of course, but you're dealing with completely. Things outside the realm there.
So did Tom Brady and the Patriots all those years, but there's not that many windows when you have a dynasty. That's the problem. You're dealing with a dynasty. There's not that many windows. You miss a year. Now, when is that going to come back around? It's very hard to believe they're going to be better without Stefon Diggs, but maybe they replace him.
Yeah. Let's roll on and switch it up from football to basketball. It is Final Four weekend. We will get our national champions in men's and women's basketball. The men's side, for people that, you got your quote unquote chaos last year in some ways, where Florida Atlantic and San Diego State, Miami, and Connecticut all in the Final Four. So a little bit non-traditional. This tournament, admittedly, I think you would probably agree, less in terms of delivering the.
You could argue North Carolina State. I mean, I know that they took but as an 11 seed, that is a Cinderella run.
In terms of Final Four, there are a lot of really great, intriguing storylines in the Final Four. Tournament on the whole feels like we lost a little bit, not lost, but just didn't hand. Sometimes you do. It's how it works sometimes. Not much in the way of madness this year.
Well, after the first weekend, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, Oakland beating Kentucky.
And even the first weekend, we were fortunate and blessed. It was our site in Pittsburgh where we got 2 overtime games in the second round. You got Oakland over Kentucky.
Yeah, the best games of the whole tournament, to be honest with
you had
Creighton there winning.
Oregon, who played their way in via the Pac-12 tournament, wouldn't have been in otherwise. Nearly knocks off Creighton, was a 3 seed, and same concept for North Carolina State, plays their way in via the ACC, wouldn't have been up in otherwise, and ends up knocking off Oakland and Jack Golke, who became a household name. And of course, NC State, the Wolfpack, end up in the Final Four. But so on the whole, tournament, not crazy, not really many buzzer beaters. Light in the overtime games. We had 2 of them in Pittsburgh. But in terms of the Final Four, you got some real quality here on multiple fronts. We'll take the North Carolina State side. You've got a matchup of 2 of the most electrifying players in the tournament. One of them, who you've known for the past 2 seasons in college basketball, Zach Edey. He's on his way to be the Wooden Award winner, the Player of the Year, National Player of the Year again for a second time. Not too many people in the history of college basketball have done that. And
finally gets it done, because the commentary was he would be the only one ever to not appear in a Final Four with that individual success. He gets off the snide there, even though he hasn't won a national title. He at least gets it done now. So, because that was the commentary last year. Can you win with a player like that? Can he lead a team that's not guard play? Usually does it in March. You're building off a big. This is 20 years ago basketball. And they kind of proved that wrong a little bit by at least getting to a Final Four.
Him and the same, say the same concept for Matt Painter, Purdue's coach, who they get upset by Fairleigh Dickinson last year, and it's like, here we go with Purdue again. A lot of pressure on them. They are in the Final Four for the first time in 40 plus years. They will play America's new big man sweetheart in DJ Burns, who just slowly backed his way into the hearts of basketball fans across this country.
Hard to not root for him.
In doing so, guys got a great personality and plenty of other shooters on that team too. And they played they're trying to do what Connecticut did in nearly 15 years ago now in 2011, where they won 5 games in 5 days in the Big East. And then eventually Kemba Walker and them boys eventually won the NCAA tournament. So that's a fun matchup on that side. Then if you like slog, heavy, defensive type of basketball. Now on the other side, we got some stuff that may, if you're an NBA fan or like scoring, you're probably going to like a little bit better. And that's Alabama, who's the #1 scoring team in the country, averaging over 90 points a game, one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. They were just behind Kentucky in that metric. They make it there for the first time in program history. And when Nick,
people thought they were going to go last year and the year before, like that was the Alabama team that was building up to having success as a 1 seed. They now do it now with less pressure.
The tide has turned, pun intended, where Nick Saban retires, and now here comes Nate Oates.
Are they a basketball school? Is Bama a basketball school now? Because you've seen Nick Saban retires, they lose a bunch of recruits and transfer players on the football side. Everybody comes to the basketball team. They're building up with recruits, and all of a sudden they're in the Final Four. So does Nick Saban's exit the ESPN make them a basketball school? Obviously not, but great for Bama fans. We'll see if they care about basketball for the future, and it's not just 1 year.
And then here you go. Your opponent is Connecticut in the Final Four for the 6th time and trying to repeat as national champions, be the first team to do that since Florida did it 06, 07. And Donovan Clingan, who's just a beast underneath, beast on defense, a double machine. That's going to be a fun matchup between those 2 teams. So you get a little bit of both. Last year, you kind of had it weird. Like you knew one of these random ass teams was going to make it to the championship game.
San Diego State getting there. Like who thought, and FAU was a second away from being in there themselves. Like it could have been mid-major. Like it was right there to have that. And we've had Cinderella stories before with George Mason, etc. But this VCU, you had multiple in the Final Four. That really was very much a rarity. But now you had the intrigue, and this is normally what is good for the ratings. I will get to in a minute, though, that I feel like despite how good this tournament was overall, certainly in gameplay, certainly in stars, certainly in intrigue, having blue blood programs, one trying to Bama fans,
heavy
by the
on
way.
clock.
Well, Bama fans, I know you're used to you're the blue blood. You're playing basketball now, whereas you're the Cinderella facing the Blue Bloods. I don't know if they know how to handle that. But you have UConn trying to build a dynasty here, even though they kind of were left out in the cold on conference realignment on the football side. Since then, it almost is like the program decided, okay, you know what? Were we really going to win a natty in football anyway? It was never going to happen. So screw it. All of our money is basketball, and not even just on the women's side, but on the men's side too, of course. They're building up. Yeah, they had that Kemba Walker year. Kevin Ollie won them a national title when they were a high seed, and now they're building a dynasty again where they could win another one back-to-back years out of the Big East. And then, of course, you have the other side that we talked about with NC State and company. So you have all of that, but the ratings and maybe the intrigue is even greater on the women's side of things, as weird as this year has been. So we'll see how this finishes. But
only to your point about the chalk, only 2 of the Sweet 16 teams below a 5 seed. Clemson, who was a 6 seed, they made it to the Elite Eight, lost to Alabama,
and ACC teams are the ones who do it.
2 ACC teams, and North Carolina State, conference champion, 11 seed, plays their way in, and of course they're in the Final Four. But yeah, you had Duke, Gonzaga, Illinois, Tennessee, all top 5 seeds in the Sweet 16 this year. There wasn't the 12 or the 13 or the 14 Long Beach or whoever, playing.
And you do it this year because
NC
a lot of
State as an 11, but yeah, like you said, they're an ace. They're Power 5. They're a major team. So
yeah, I mean, and also it is a program with some history behind it. It's not like this is completely out of absolute nowhere. So with that said, they do get there, and the ACC does prove themselves a little bit that maybe they were underrated, maybe they were kind of shooed away, and the ACC had trouble getting teams in the tournament. I do think maybe Pitt shouldn't have been there anyway because the out-of-conference schedule and that bad loss to Missouri and the UW win doesn't mean anything like it did in past years, even though Huggins' drama wasn't their fault. But the resume is the resume. But the ACC, and even when we talked to the coach after the game in Pittsburgh, talked about, this helps the conference. It does. The Big 12 looks bad this year after clearly the best conference in the country the last several years. 3 straight years with a team from the Big 12 in the national title game. Texas Tech did not win. They lose to Virginia, but Baylor won. Kansas won. Kansas gets injured this year. They're not who they normally are. Baylor's not who they have been in recent years. Obviously, West Virginia, that's normally a contender in a quad 1 game and quad 1 team. Huggins, worst season in program history. They're building for the future now with Darren DeVries. So all of that happened to make this a year the ACC can kind of take over and show they're better than who we would have thought maybe they are. And yet you still have some blue bloods that do go far. Although, George, if you're a Duke fan, you're not satisfied with the Elite Eight. If you're a fan of some of the programs, you're not satisfied with where you lose. Duke losing to North Carolina State, a rival in their state, and they don't go as far as a kind of below them program in the area. I'm sure that's not satisfying to them. Same thing with North Carolina. They felt like they should have went further. So while there wasn't the slew of tons of Sweet 16s of high seeds like in past recent years, you still had a lot of injuries to be part of this. A lot of teams that normally are contenders were down this year. A lot of weird things had to happen. And then some of those teams that did win a game or two in March, the program expects to go further normally. So it still was one of those years that did offer you some weirdness and some madness overall. But again, even though also a lot of chalk advanced, none of this on the men's side tops the intrigue and the drama and the storylines and the rivalries of the women's game. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese now going to WNBA. Juju and Paige Becker can be part of the future. But they had back-to-back nights, back-to-back games of all of the key moments, all the ratings were there. Again, who knows about the future? They got to keep doing this year after year after year to generate nearly the money of the men's game. The men's game will still make more money than the women's game, unfortunately for them. But in terms of just watching as a fan or covering, the intrigue was there on the women's side. So we'll see where the future goes. And if this ever gets to maybe having neutral site all the way through the tournament, or maybe not just being on ESPN2 late at night, maybe getting more networks involved, more money involved.
ABC, yeah.
We'll see if they can get on more of that linear TV, etc. That's where the future needs to go. But if we were talking 10 years ago, I never would have thought I would ever say the sentence there was more intrigue and interest in the women's game than the men's game, for fair otherwise. And this year, that really was the case.
Yeah, you got the aforementioned LSU Iowa battle of last year's national championship game. It came in the Elite Eight this year as Iowa outlasted close at the half, and then Iowa and Clark pulled away in the second half. Angel Reese fouled out in the final minutes, and as Mike said, she is declared for the WNBA draft. Baltimore native will take her talents to the W. But you've got Connecticut on this side as well. You got 2 for 2, men's and women's. NC State and Connecticut, both programs having men's and women's Final Four.
With UConn, but it is kind of with NC State,
Yeah, and NC State upset Cameron Brink and Stanford in the Sweet 16, upset the number 1 seed in their region, Texas. To then move on. They'll have a huge challenge in Dawn Staley's South Carolina squad. South Carolina, arguably the best team in women's college basketball in the
all
last
the talk
5 years.
Of Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, South Carolina could easily win the national championship.
Yeah, it's so, what are we going to do with that? If you're NC State, and then haven't lost a game, 36-0, like what are you going to do? But we'll see. and Connecticut and Iowa, which will be again kind of like the same Connecticut and Connecticut and Alabama matchup for the men. Connecticut and Iowa should be your, if you like scoring, that's where you're going to find it between Paige Beckers for UConn and Caitlin Clark for Iowa. That should be super entertaining games this weekend in Cleveland. But yeah, and I'm excited to see the number that it's going to do television wise. Because 12
does it
million.
beat the LSU Angel Reese game between that's rivalry? It's hard to say that. I mean, that's borderline. We're getting into race relations there. A lot of intrigue is separate from basketball in that game. Seriously, that's why the ratings were there.
Yeah,
it's annoying, but that game gets. I mean, that rivalry gets into politics, etc. I don't know if the Paige Becker matchup has that, even though it's obviously a great player. Gino Auriemma is trying to beef it up. If you heard his recent comments, that she's a better overall player than Caitlin Clark. And Gino's also dropped some bombs that if they would win a national title, it would be his most impressive ever. And he has a slew of them. If those things are true and he keeps trying to drop those comments, maybe that pisses off Caitlin Clark. Maybe that, ignites her, or maybe they don't even get there. Like, I mean, they got to go through different things,
I'll say it'll get like 9-10, but to your point, it was the intrigue of it's the rematch of the national championship.
Right.
It's Angel and Caitlin. It's the hand thing, everything from last year.
Yeah.
Throw in the Cajun spice of Kim Mulkey and all that she drags along.
Yeah. I mean,
where she goes.
Kind of sucks. It was an Elite Eight game, but right.
Yeah. So and to your point you just made, the time slot thing, like perfect for me on a Monday night, sitting down 7:00. I'm like, hell yeah, real easy to put this on. I don't have to go find it. Saturdays, the two games coming up for the women this Friday, that UConn Iowa game's the second game, scheduled 9:45. If your first one runs long, it's a 10:00 game on a Friday night.
The ratings for UConn USC were not as good, clearly, as Iowa and LSU. And yes, there's a rivalry there and better players, but you could argue it's simply the time slot situation. 7 p.m. is better for everybody on the East Coast, even for the whole country, versus starting at 9:45 or 10, which is way late on the East Coast. People going to bed, not staying up for the whole thing. And even if the West Coast watches it, you're losing half the country. That's why 7 p.m. is the prime slot for a quick lesson of TV.
So you'll get NC State and NC State and Carolina in that slot, and then 9:45 or 30 minutes after.
You wonder why.
State.
Why?
Yeah,
that's not the better matchup. I mean, I obviously South Carolina is the best team. And
I was about to say, like, I feel bad.
That's not the better ratings matchup. That's not the better ratings.
It's like I hope it is like deference to, hey, South Carolina is the number 1 overall seed. They haven't lost a game all season. They get the better slot.
Money,
but to your point, like, in terms of eyes and drawn, it's Gino Auriemma and UConn and their storied history against Caitlin Clark, who's made her own storied history over her last 4 years. So
this is the better matchup.
Yeah, that's your better 7:00 game on a Friday because I mean, I'll be watching, but I think that's a hard 9:45 is a hard, and I keep saying 10 because you and I know how this goes. Like, you won't tip off till closer to 10, and it's going to be hard.
I mean, I'm a vampire. I'll watch the whole game.
Especially like kids. Like, I know it's a Friday night, but like, it's fun seeing people, families, young girls, young boys, seeing people bring their families to these women's basketball games, especially when Clark's involved. And it's hard to do that with, 2 kids and parents up at 9:45 on a Friday night watching for 2 hours. So.
Yeah, I mean, again, my daughter will be asleep. I will watch. I'm a vampire. I do stay up no matter what. But for the most part, it's not better for ratings. I do want to ask the hot take question that is going to be discussed, that will be discussed after the game, win or lose. In the women's game, because I'm a big proponent of team sports, teams win championships, not individuals. It's hard to hold that against individuals if your team isn't good enough around you. And we have seen Caitlin Clark not have enough help around her. Even early in the West Virginia game, they were missing shots. She's a force, but if she has an off night, they can't win. She's now in back-to-back Final Fours. What people forget, George, prior to this ascension as a superstar, she was a great player, but 3 years ago, she lost in the second round at home, which is unheard of, and she was not nearly as much of a star then. Those type of things do not happen to the greatest women's players, whether we're going to Cheryl Swoops, whether we're talking about Diana Taurasi. They win championships, if not multiple, and usually on stacked rosters, but they clip them off and own an era. She's owned an era as an offensive force and set the record, even over Pistol Pete. But if she retires without any championship, certainly not even a championship game appearance, can she be in the GOAT conversation for just the college game? And by the way, the history players that I'm mentioning that are in TV are all saying no, even though she might be the greatest scorer of all time. They're now kind of saying that if without a championship they can't put her there. It's unfair, and winning one at Iowa was harder because there's not another Hall of Famer there.
It is
But
harder.
I don't know if she's going to get in that conversation in amongst the basketball community without one, regardless of what she does in the WNBA.
Yeah, the title, Sue Bird's got a title.
Sue
Angel
Bird is
Reese
another
now
one.
has a title.
Angel
Like
Reese
all
does
these
have
people.
a title, yeah.
Yeah. Renee Montgomery, just people.
I mean, name me a Hall of Fame women's player just from the women's college game, not even WNBA career, that did not win a championship.
Yeah.
They almost all get one.
Candace Parker's got a national title. Like I think it's Candace Parker got 2 national titles, I think. So like you've got to, I think you need to, because considering the history of that program and how it hasn't had this level of success to be here and to be so dominant in doing so, yeah, it's got to be. I think you've got to leave with the title there to put yourself in. She's already in a pantheon in terms of the scoring, like you said, but to be like team, and our team was so dominant, and not just me. Not only does it elevate her, but it elevates everybody that's on that team with her to be like, yeah, we were the best team in college basketball this season. So I'm willing to agree with you that there will kind of always be that ding on her resume, especially with how, you can score, you can hit 8, 9, 10 threes a game and score 40 points a game and you still didn't pull a national title. People have won national titles with less in a lot of ways.
And of course they had more help around them, but they didn't have to do as much. But a ding against her too is she scores 41, but she doesn't necessarily guard the best player on the opponent.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those players I mentioned did.
Yeah.
Is she the best defensive player? Again, the game is about more than just offense.
Yes.
She could be the best scorer of all time, but is she the best overall player? And I will say this: I don't think she can be the GOAT without a title, whether that's fair or not. But I will give you the other side of that. That'll be a feather in her cap if she does get it done, because it could happen, even though South Carolina is certainly the favorite, and Paige Becker and UConn, no slouch. You certainly could lose to them as well. George, if you look at the path, and this is only the 3rd Final Four all time for Iowa. Prior to her going there, they were not a women's basketball powerhouse. Like before Diana Taurasi got to UConn, they already had championships. Tennessee, UConn, even Baylor. These programs have won championships galore over the course of history. It's not like one player all of a sudden started that. Of course, you can go way back to the beginning, but there are many of these greats that got on the ship. And Cheryl Swoops is maybe another one that they haven't done that since her at USC prior to this year. So maybe she did this too, you could bring up. But if Caitlin Clark would win a national championship in this bracket that is murderer's row,
it was the most difficult Iowa, bracket of all of them. Yep.
By far. You could argue it would be a tougher path than any of the others we mentioned in terms of path to win a championship and who shall have to beat the individual player and the programs. Plus, George, she would win a national championship for Iowa that, whether we're talking men's, women's, I mean, really, even going back to football, we're talking about a half century plus, and we're talking about a claimed title that really didn't get one on the field. Otherwise, Iowa as a program doesn't really have much. If she would bring that trophy and a parade to Iowa that is not known for winning championships despite having good teams,
correct,
in leading them to 2 of their 3 Final Fours in program history that they weren't great prior to her, really, she's kind of, a homegrown product as well. She's decided to stay there and buck the major historic programs of UConn and Tennessee that certainly did want her, Notre Dame, LSU, etc. Mm-hmm. Then I think maybe she is the GOAT, because one championship, but we talked about this in other sports, George. It's the same thing of
like LeBron going back to Cleveland.
Well, like LeBron winning one at Cleveland you could argue, if you're talking history, LeBron's 1 in Cleveland is better than KD's 2 in Golden State. That Giannis's 1 with Milwaukee that hadn't won one in 40 years is better than KD's 2 in Golden State. That Dirk's 1 with Dallas is better than KD's 2 in Golden State. You could argue that in terms of how special they are, etc. Winning 1 at Iowa, is that not better than winning, the 9th for
3,
UConn or 3 in a row for UConn or whatever Tennessee? Those numbers are just so high.
Because then you could argue product of the system type of thing,
Right. It's not just another one for Gina Auriemma or Pat Summitt when she was still with us. You are the reason why there might be a Hall of Fame situation for your head coach. It's you. It's not her, it's you. Like, you're the face of this. You're starting this. Everyone needs to thank you for what's going on there, not the reverse of you joining something. So that might be the most impressive national title ever won by a woman's player. The other argument probably would be what would happen at USC with Cheryl Swoops or with Cheryl with Miller
Cheryl
with
Miller,
Reggie Miller's Cheryl Miller and not Cheryl Swoops. But that would be the other argument. Is what Cheryl Miller did. But will they do it? I don't think so. I think South Carolina is going to keep this moving, and that's who I have in my bracket. They're just too dominant, and unless Caitlin Clark scores 50, somebody else is going to have to drop 20 or 30. It cannot just be her because they are so great defensively too. They can also score. I think she could be contained a little bit, even if not stopped. They hold Caitlin Clark to 30 instead of 41. Is there enough around her to win the game?
Mountaineers laid the blueprint, and South Carolina can follow it. Where you
then you're in foul trouble. But
you've got to play physical and you've got to play defense. And South Carolina is maybe a little more disciplined and can get some of those calls to go not go against them in playing her physical. And I think that's going to be the difference at the end of the day. That will put a nice springtime bow on this edition of the Howitzer and Buzz-saw Show. A reminder to find us wherever you get your podcasts. That includes on Apple, Google, Spotify, TuneIn, and more. Wherever you get podcasts, just search Howitzer or Howitzer Buzz-saw to find us.
Of course, you can find us on social at Mike Asti 11, at Gerbo 3, at Howitzer Buzz-saw for the show handle. Again, we are available everywhere you get your podcasts, and you can listen whether you're on a run, whether you just want to relax on the beach, as we're getting now into the warmer months. Vacations are happening after all these games are played, and then we get into baseball, maybe on future shows as well. The Pirates, as we're speaking, haven't lost a game. Are they for real? I don't think I'm, slurping the Kool-Aid, but I don't want to pop a balloon just yet. We'll see what happens here, and when Livy Dunn starts going to games, when her boo gets called up, and if that does happen, so it's some intrigue there as well. But and it'd also be interesting to see these numbers. Women's Final Four versus men's Final Four. This might be the first chance the women's game could actually outdraw the men's game in terms of interest. That could very well happen this year, even though UConn's there, major programs. It's not Duke, it's not North Carolina, it's not Kentucky, it's not Kansas. All the stars in the women's game. We'll see.
Yeah. This has been another edition of the Howitzer and Buzz-saw Show, where we conquer free agency, brackets, and sports radio.
One day at a time.